Before you clear out an old toolbox, barn shelf, basement cabinet, or garage drawer, there is one mistake I want you to avoid: deciding what is junk by how rusty it looks. Old hand tools were made to work, so the valuable ones often look exactly like the things people toss into a scrap bucket. The difference can come down to a maker's stamp, an unusual shape, a certain material, or one small part most people would never notice. Now, an old tool is not automatically valuable. Most are not. Condition, completeness, rarity, and the exact model matter enormously. But documented antique tool auctions show that some ordinary-looking tools have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. So before you wire brush anything, repaint anything, or give a box of old tools away, here are 10 things worth checking twice. Start with the little measuring tools people barely notice. An old tape measure can look like the least exciting thing in a toolbox, but unusual advertising versions and uncommon early examples can attract collectors. At one Brown antique tool auction, a Stanley 6-foot No. 7 366 advertising tape measure, known as the Bundles for Britain version, sold for about $181, including the buyer's premium. That does not mean every old Stanley tape is valuable. What matters is the exact version. Look for an unusual slogan, decorated metal case, maker's name, patent information, and whether the original tape is still inside. If the case is brass or has an old printed design, do not polish it aggressively before you know what it is. Honest age can be more desirable than a shiny surface someone created yesterday. The same rule applies to old tri-squares. Most are ordinary working tools, but some 19th century examples were made with ebony, rosewood, German silver, brass, and surprisingly elaborate details. One ebony tri-square with German silver trim and a level vial sold at a Brown auction for roughly $689, including premium. If you find a dark hardwood square with decorative metalwork, an inset vial, or an engraved maker's mark, stop before throwing it into the $5 pile. Photograph the markings and check whether the blade and stock appear original. With antique tools, craftsmanship itself can be a clue. Next, watch for tiny levels and strange measuring devices. A 4-inch Miller's Falls No. 4 triangular level with its original vial and much of its original japanned finish sold for about $537, including premium, at a documented auction. 4 inches long. That is exactly the sort of object someone could mistake for a broken piece from a larger tool. If you find a miniature cast iron level, corner level, inclinometer, or another measuring tool whose purpose is not obvious, look for a maker and model before discarding it. And resist the urge to repaint it. Original finish, even when worn, can matter to collectors. Number 4 is an old hand brace. Nobody needs electricity to understand why these survive for generations. They are simple, strong, and beautifully mechanical. The more elaborate framed braces, sometimes called ultimatum braces, can use fine hardwood, brass, decorative fittings, and unusual chucks. A beach example sold at a Brown auction for about $186, including premium, while scarcer versions can bring more. That may not sound like a fortune, but it is a lot more than the few dollars an unidentified brace might bring at a yard sale. Look for names such as marples, decorative brass framing, intact wooden parts, and a complete chuck. If old auger bits were stored beside it, keep them together until you know whether they belong to the set. Now we get into tools where rarity can push the numbers much higher. Old adjustable wrenches are everywhere, but early patent designs can be completely different from the crescent wrench in a modern toolbox. Brown Tool Auctions has described a quick adjust wrench made by the P.J. Beal Manufacturing Company of Terre Haute, Indiana, as extremely rare, with only a tiny number of examples known. A 2026 auction catalog placed an estimate of $1,200 to $1,800 on a lot containing the wrench and a related model. The lesson is simple. If an old wrench adjusts in a way you have never seen before, do not assume somebody cobbled it together in a farm shop. Look for a patent number, city, manufacturer, or unusual mechanism before cleaning or modifying it. Number 6 is the kind of specialized Stanley tool that can hide in plain sight. The Stanley number 212 veneer scraper is a compact cast iron tool made for cabinet and veneer work. A good example, with much of its original Japanning, sold for about $638, including premium, at a Brown auction. If you do not know what one is, it can look like part of another tool. That is why model numbers matter so much. When you find a small Stanley casting with a cutter, cap, adjustment hardware, or a shape you cannot immediately identify, photograph every number and patent date before deciding it is incomplete. Specialized tools often look strange precisely because modern shops no longer use them every day. Then there is the Stanley number 164 low-angle smooth plane. To a casual eye, it is just another old hand plane. To a collector, the exact type, blade marking, casting, handles, finish, and originality can make a large difference. A Type 1 number 164, offered by Brown Tool Auctions in 2026, carried an estimate of $600 to $1,200, with an absentee bid shown at $925. This is why I would never strip and repaint an old Stanley before identifying it. Restoration may make an ordinary user plane nicer to work with, but on a collectible example, you can erase the very evidence people use to date it. Number 8 is where an old plane can move into genuinely serious money. A Stanley number 43 Miller's Patent Plow Plane Type 1 with a complete set of original cutters in a reproduction box sold for $3,955 at a Brown auction. These planes have distinctive metal bodies, wooden handles, fences, and narrow cutters that can look like a confusing box of parts if you have never seen one assembled. Completeness matters enormously. If you find a strange old plane with a group of matching cutters, do not separate them at a yard sale. The boring little iron or fence sitting beside the tool may be the piece a collector has spent years trying to find. Another name worth remembering is Norris. British infill planes combine heavy metal bodies with carefully fitted hardwood and were made for extremely precise work. The rare patterns can command substantial prices. Brown Tool Auctions' 2026 catalog described a special order Norris tilt-handle infill rebate plane as exceptionally rare and estimated it at $5,000 to $10,000. That does not mean every infill plane is worth thousands. But if you find a heavy steel or gunmetal plane with rosewood or ebony infill, a thick iron, precision adjustment hardware, and a Norris mark, do not attack it with a wire wheel. Photograph it first and identify the exact pattern. And number 10 shows just how extreme the collector market can become. A rare gunmetal combination plane based on Charles Miller's 1872 patent, manufactured by Russell and Irwin as the number 50, was described by Brown Tool Auctions as one of the holy grails of tool collecting. A 2026 catalog estimated a fine example at $12,000 to $24,000. That is an auction estimate, not a guaranteed selling price, and it represents an exceptionally rare version. But that is exactly the point. The object itself does not scream $20,000 collectible. Its importance comes from the material, patent, maker, configuration, condition, and how few survived. There are other documented examples that make the same point. A rare Stanley No. 1 hand plane realized $1,700 at an Australian antique tool auction, while an older New Hampshire auction report recorded another Stanley No. 1 in its original box with its original bill of sale selling for $2,970, including premium. The same auction report listed a rare Foster's patent turntable plane at $4,180. Those results are useful because they show why the exact identification matters. A common plane and a rare plane can sit next to each other on the same dusty shelf and look equally old to somebody who does not collect tools. So how do you check what you have without becoming an antique tool expert overnight? Start with the maker. Find every stamp, patent date, model number, city name, logo, and casting mark before doing anything else. Then look at the construction: brass, gunmetal, rosewood, ebony, unusual castings, elaborate adjusters, miniature specialty tools, and boxes of matching cutters deserve extra attention. Next, check completeness. A fence, cutter, depth stop, original box, spare iron, handle, or tiny screw can matter more than you expect. Finally, compare like with like. Do not see one rare plane sell for $4,000 and decide every plane in the garage is worth $4,000. Match the maker, model, type, configuration, and condition as closely as possible, and pay more attention to documented auction results than optimistic asking prices. And until you know what the tool is, do the least cleaning possible. Wipe away loose dust. Use enough light to read the markings. Then stop. Do not sand the wood. Buff old brass to a mirror. Repaint the body. Replace unusual screws, or grind away rust with a power tool. On an ordinary working tool, restoration may be perfectly sensible. On a collectible one, originality can be part of what people are paying for. You can always clean it later. You cannot put the original surface back once it is gone. Most old tools are not hidden treasures, and anybody who tells you every rusty wrench is worth thousands is selling you a fantasy. But rare tools really do turn up looking like ordinary workshop clutter. They were working objects before they became collectibles. They got scratched, dirty, passed through families, and forgotten in drawers. So if you have an old toolbox, garage, barn, or inherited workshop to sort through, take a minute before you throw the strange pieces away. Find the name, find the number, photograph the markings, and identify the tool first. Sometimes the smallest stamp on the ugliest object is the detail that changes everything.